For the last 3 centuries, we have been a colony of the Grand Spanish Empire. Though calling it grand these days would be an overstatement, it is in a rapid decline, with a civil war going on in the mainland. But luckily for us and the Cuban people, that is none of our concern. In fact, a new governor has just been appointed by the Spanish crown, and his goals are quite simple: to improve the lives of the common people of Cuba and turn us into the heart of the empire. To that end, he has already begun massive works to bring Cuba out of the status of a colony, but instead to be a nation on par with Spain. Things like building the first schools in Cuba and setting up our first factories are among his top priorities. Along with that, he is planning to expand the agricultural sector of Cuba to turn us into an exporting powerhouse. But these things take time that we have. And while he is establishing these new building works, he has also begun pushing for better laws. For the last few years, thousands of migrants have been moving to Cuba, but under old Spanish law, they have no protection. The governor plans to fix that by announcing racial segregation and protection for minorities, though the question has been raised on which minorities will have protections. But along with that, he has answered calls from the government to allow commoners to establish trade unions with the emergence factories. Like I said earlier, we have time on our side, so there is no pressure to get these reforms done before the decade is out. Catastrophe has struck Madrid. The Carlists were able to pull a surprise maneuver on the Spanish and secured the capital. With that, the Spanish government has fallen, and we are now a subject of the backwards Carlists. With this information now reaching Havana, hundreds of thousands of people have been protesting the new government and calling for the governor to secede. Though now with the current political situation, he wishes to declare independence just like the common people, it is not a viable option at this moment. We are too dependent on Spain, and we have no supporters. In order to become independent, we need international recognition and foreign troops. So he's planning to send a delegation to Washington, D.C. and Paris to see if he can gather international support for an independent Cuban state. But until that happens, he has announced that he will expand the reforms and put even more money into the new factories and universities so they'll be finished before the decade is out. And he plans in 1845 to expand these works even more. The year is now 1846, and things have come a long way in just the last decade. The government works have been completed ahead of schedule, and even new wings were attached to the new universities, and local people seeing the expansion of government industries have begun investing in their own, greatly boosting the Cuban economy. And with that, even greater news came out of Paris. The French are willing to support us in an inevitable war with Spain over independence, though the Americans aren't as keen to support us in such endeavors. This is great news for Cuba. This means in the foreseeable future we will be able to turn Cuba into an independent republic. But sadly that time cannot come yet. We are still too dependent on the Spaniards, and our economy, though improving, is still too weak to support itself. So the government has announced another wave of building projects to continue economic prosperity. About 3 years later, after French investments started to trickle into Cuba, we began attending conferences in Latin and South America. This is so we can start gaining support for independence and fostering closer ties with our cultural brothers in the rest of the Americas, so we will not be alone when independence comes. But as our governor was finishing up these talks with Brazil, Venezuela, and Colombia, news came from Madrid, more specifically directly from the Queen. The governor has been fired and replaced with someone else. This was a goddamn outrage, with thousands of people gathering in the streets of Havana. But just before things could escalate to a full-on revolt, the Queen decided to backpedal her decision. Though our previous governor will not be in power anymore, one of his closest supporters will be. And because of that, we can continue on the road to independence. But this has raised concerns that the Spanish will not accept any further attempts of independence. Because of that, we have opened secret talks with the British to see if they would be willing to support us in the Naval Department if war were ever to break out. But since we can't do much more in support of independence, we'll put it on the back burner for now and continue with economic prosperity. A decade later, Cuba has come a long way. Not only have the building projects continued, and we are planning to build infrastructure to export more and more of our agricultural goods out to Spain, but we've begun to successfully reform our society. Things like hospitals, schools, railway, and the right to vote have been established, turning Cuba from a colony controlled by the crown into a self-governing republic. Though we are still tightly under the heel of the Spanish crown, we have gained more and more freedoms without needing to take steps towards independence. And we can start to do things now like banning slavery. But news is coming out of the European continent, an anti-French coalition of the British, Spanish, and Prussians. But because of that, we have been pulled into the war too. Though we will not send troops to fight in some foolish European war, French have canceled their agreement with us. They will no longer support our independence. Though this is catastrophic in the short term, it provides us with a golden opportunity right now. With the Spanish desperate to hold their own lines, we can pressure the king to give us something, the right to our own market. Because of the current situation on the continent, he accepted. We can now determine how our goods will be sold. We can now jack up the prices for the Spanish to buy them and give premiums to our Latin American brothers. In theory, this will now open up Cuba to even more investments and economic prosperity. However, there's one problem we face. We cannot get the goods out in time. We simply do not have the convoys, and our ports are unable to support the sheer amount of goods leaving Cuba. Because of that, the government has sanctioned port expansions and port construction in the entirety of Cuba. We will become an economic superpower one way or another. But for now, independence is still a long ways away. We plan to sit back and do nothing more on the road to independence until a prime opportunity arises. 2 decades later, Cuba has progressed greatly. New trade deals being opened up with Latin American countries, and now the British Empire themselves. We are in a mini golden age. And with that, the reforms of our new chancellor have gone along swimmingly. But now he is moving on to his biggest reform yet, instituting public schools. This will educate the people, and also teach them why we should pursue independence. But out of the blue, the church came along and demanding we stop trying to enact public schools. Reasonably, our governor refused. But then, the church did the most unreasonable thing imaginable. They started a civil war, taking the majority of the country unwillingly into their sphere. Though this might look like an utter catastrophe, this actually isn't that big of a problem, because of one major thing: the Spanish. Though we hate them with our guts, they are still our overlords and our allies. And with that, they sent the bulk of their army to the Cuban island, and with that, we will drive these traitors into the sea. With the church defeated and them now permanently out of our government with the enactment of a bill separating church and state, the plan was to continue our reforms and enact a new building project to expand coffee and banana plantations. But then, a miracle came. The French reached out, wanting to renew their support of our independence. And moreover, they say that they are ready for a war right now. This is the best chance we have of defeating the Spanish while they're weak after the war. Even though the Russians say that they'll join the war on the Spanish side, we do not care. We will liberate ourselves, we will liberate Puerto Rico, and we will force Spain pay for the construction of a new Cuba. The war is won. Independence at last. We are the second nation in the history of the Caribbean to declare independence from a European empire. With that, the people are rejuvenating in Havana and all over Cuba, and especially in Puerto Rico, which we have liberated and annexed into the new Republic of Cuba. And even better, we're forcing the Spaniards to transfer thousands of millions of dollars to us, which will be used to fund economic works to bring Cuba on par with nations like Mexico, Colombia, and Venezuela. And as our new government is settling in, a new faction has arisen, the Communists, saying that the only way for Cuba to survive long term will be to adopt the ideas of Karl Marx back in Europe. The government is hesitant to take on the communists' ideas, but they are placing them under consideration. But they said that they will have to wait, because securing Cuba's position in the short term is more important than the long term. But we do not care about the communists or the government. We care about one thing, that we are finally free, and we look to the future to build a true Cuban nation. As our government celebrates the new year as we move into the 1870s, news has reached us from Moscow. The Russians are willing to guarantee our independence along with the Austrians and Mexicans. This is phenomenal. This means we will no longer have to rely on ourselves for our own defense. We can work together, and of course we'll sign it, so therefore we can also assist our Mexican brothers. But right now, our current government is planning on announcing a pan-Caribbean confederation. Though it's many years out from its completion, we will begin laying the groundwork. Our government has set eyes on Central America, and plans to rebuild the old republic have started. With that, we will secure ourselves a base in the region, Costa Rica. As we sent their demands, we were surprised to find out that the Costa Ricans accepted this, becoming our protectorate. But any future endeavors will result in the Colombians getting involved. Because of that, the government has planned for a preemptive strike to cripple Colombia, so we will be able to expand in Central America unimpeded. But as we were mobilizing, Brazil said that they would support the Colombians unconditionally. And because of that, we are forced to back down. And with it, in less than a year, our plans of uniting Central America have gone up in smoke. This has shaken confidence in the government, even more so because our trade agreements with Mexico, Britain, France, and Austria are up for renewal, and they've all canceled them, and our government did absolutely nothing to prevent it. Because of this, people have been protesting and calling for a new form of government, one never seen before, a council republic, and the communists have taken up the mantle and leading the protesters. For a while, the protests were peaceful, but all of a sudden, shots were fired in Havana, a dozen protesters dead. This has sparked outrage, and now armed rebellion in central and southern Cuba have been taking place, and with it, the beginning of a civil war. We, the Communist Party of Cuba, will liberate the people of not just Cuba, but the Caribbean in due time. But first, we need to secure our position. The Republicans in their twisted ways have secured central and southern Cuba despite the rebellions. This may seem scary, but we have a trick up our sleeve. The defensive pact we signed at the beginning of the decade is still valid. And moreover, the Austrians and the Mexicans are supporting us as a legitimate government of Cuba. Though the Russians have backed down and will not get involved, we do not need them. We have our allies, and we will win this war. With the war now won, the liberation of Cuba has been completed, but the road ahead is not clear. With us having almost unchecked authority in the Cuban government, we have already begun enacting our policies. The establishment of the Council Republic will have to wait, however, as immediately we banned child labor and enacted government unions to protect the working people of Cuba. Along with that, we have also begun to hoard up the farms that the landowners had and redistribute them to the people, while also keeping many for ourselves. The old government failed to continue Cuba's economic golden age. We will start a new one, but we'll do more than just liberate the Cuban people. Before the century is out, we will liberate the Caribbean, Central America, and potentially South America in due time. But for now, we will secure our position on Cuba. Viva la Republic of Cuba, and viva la the global revolution!